Everyone. In today's lecture, we will be studying about the layouts. We will see that how we can create a web page with different kind of layouts, right? So there are many ways you can create or organize components on your web page. The old web used tables, right, in order to arrange elements on the web page. You have rows and the columns, and then you organize your elements on the web page with the help of tables. Then with the passage of the time, we have floats. With the help of float properties in the CSS, what we can do is we can organize which components will go on the left side, which component will go on the right side of your page, right? So in this way, we can organize that how our components will render on the page, what their positions will be, and then after floats, there is now the two new concepts, Flexbox and the grid, which are very, very important concepts if you want to make any web page layout. So with the help of Flexbox and the grid, which is a new thing and the most used CSS kind of thing for creating a layout on a web page nowadays. So with the help of Flexbox, you can organize your elements on a web page in a one-dimensional way, either on an x-axis or on a y-axis. Whereas with the grid, you can organize your components into rows and columns. Grid is a two-dimensional way, whereas Flexbox is a one-dimensional way. So to organize or to create a web page layout, we have these four possible options with the help of which we can make a web page layout. Tables was the old options and is now not used that much in creating a web page layout. Now, the most widely used ones are the Flexbox and the grid. So you have already covered the tables in your previous lectures. I will discuss about floats and Flexbox in today's lecture, and I will create a separate video for a grid so that I do not give you so much information that you cannot absorb in the single video. So I will create a separate video for a grid. For this video, we will be covering about floats and the Flexbox. So let's start. So here I have a simple uh, folder created in my directory, which is a layout. Inside this, I will create a HTML file with the name float.html. I will write a code snippet for my page. I will name it as float. In this table, in this page, we will be writing a code to understand the concept of float. I will open this page. You can see that this page is currently empty. Now what I will do is I will simply go here. I will make up something so that I can explain you the concept of float. I will create a code snippet. Let's say I can create a main div, and inside this main div I have two div with the class float. I will simply write this is the left section. The content of left section will goes here, and then I will create another div, like I will give it a class of right. I will write this is the right section and the content of the right will goes here. Then I will create another div here. I will name it last, just to explain the concept. This is the last section and the content of this last section will go here. Now if I came back and I see on the web page, you can see that this is rendered like this. Okay. So now you have the left section, you have the right section, and you have the last section. But you can see that this content is stacked on top of each other. The first section is on the top, the second section is below that, and then the last section is at the end. So why this is happening? Because These elements are enclosed in a div tag, which is a block level elements. I hope that you have the concept of block level elements. If not, the block level elements are those elements that take the entire available space, right? So it means that this div will take the entire space and pushes the next element to go in the next line. That's why, since we have a space available in the first line, but still the next section is going on the next line. The reason behind this is that the div is a block level element and it has a display property of block. If you come here and you see here, you can see, if you select this div, you can see the left section is selected and it has a property of display block. All those elements which have a display properties of a block, they take the entire available space and pushes the content that comes after them to the next line. Let me style it a little bit so that you understand it more better. I will add an internal style sheet. For an internal style sheet to be added, you have to use a style tag, and inside the style tag you have to write the styles. I will make a selection based off of the classes. So I will simply give a background color for the understanding purpose to all these div. Right. For now, I will not do any uh, property like this. Let me do the last one and I will give this color. So I have given three colors to all these three divs. Now, if we see, these three colors are applied and it is now visible that the first section is taking the entire available width and pushes the content next to it to the next line. Similarly, the next section is taking the entire available width and pushing the content to the next line. So this is happening because the div is a block level element. Despite having the fact that the content that is going inside these divs are small, it is taking the entire available width of its parent. Now what we want to do is, instead of stacking elements on top of each other, we want these elements to show beside each other. Meaning we want the left section to show on the left side and the right section to go on the right side of this screen. So this is how we are organizing different components on our web page. This is how we are making a web page layout. So what we have to do is, I will come here, I will say that my left section will float on the left side and my right section will flow on the right side. So I have written two things, float left and float right. What I will do is, I will simply now save it, and now you can see there is something that has happened. The left section has gone to the left side. The right section has taken the space on the right side, but the last section has also you can see has floated on the top, right? What should have happened, but what we were thinking, that the last section will stay on the bottom, whereas the left section will go on the left side and the right section will go on the right side. But this didn't actually happen. The reason is that whenever we apply a float property to any element, we should tell the browser when we want the elements to clear that float property, right? Right now, what is happening? We have the float property here. We have the float property on the second section as well. Since we have not cleared the float property, the float is also getting applied to the last section automatically. So what we have to do now is, we have to explicitly write that we want to clear the both right and left float. So we will come here in the last step, we will write clear both. Then what will happen, you will see, now the last section is on the end. So now the top section is going on the left side, the main first section go on the left side, second section go on the right side. Now since after this we don't want elements to float, right? It's We don't want them to float right left, we want them to take the normal uh, place on the browser. So what we have to do is after this section, we have to clear the floating effect. So that's why inside this div, I have written that I want to clear this floating effect. What this will do is it will clear the floating effect before rendering this element, and this last element will be rendered in a normal position like how it was rendering before in a stacking position. So this is the concept of load. Now you will see that there is a space available between this left and the right section. The reason is that this space is because we don't have enough amount of the content available inside these, right? If we have the enough amount of the content, then it will keep taking the spaces. Or what if you want to push this element also on this side? What you have to do is instead of float right, you have to also float it to the left. Now the space that will be available free is on the right side because all the content are floating on the left side. So this is how you can make your web page, and on web page you can decide which section will go on the left side and which section will go on the right side. And this is how you can make an amazing web page layouts by organizing components on the various side. You can have more than three, four sections, and you can decide this section will go on left, then there is another section that will go on right, there is another section. You can also, what you can do is, for example, both of these elements are now floating on the left side. You can decide how much width you want to give to each of these elements. Let's say I want that my left section took the 60% of the width, so what it will, and my right section took the 40% of the width. See what will happen. Now you can see both of these elements are still floating, but now the width that is given to the left section is 60%, and the width that is given to the right section is 40%. Similarly, you can also give height. Let's say I give 400 pixel height. So now you can see this is how you can create an amazing layout. Let me give you an example of the layout that you can create with these kind of floating properties. Here you can see that there is a section that is on the left side, there is a section on the right side. Similarly, if you go down, there is a section on the left side, there is a section on the right side. These can be easily created with the help of float. Left section, right section, left section, right section. This is how you can create amazing layouts with the help of floats, right? I hope this concept is clear to you. The important point that needs to be remembered is that whenever you are applying the float properties to the elements, you must also clear when you want not your elements to keep floating, right? So here we want on the left and the right divs to float, whereas we want the last div to render in a normal position on the web page. So what we did is after the right div is rendered, we have clear the floating effect. So which has basically the effect of that clear is that the last div appears in a normal position on a web page layout. So I hope that this concept is clear to you. So now I will move on to the next concept, which is the more important one and the most used one, or the most widely used one concept to create a web page layout nowadays, which is Flexbox. So what I will do is I will create another file with the name flex. I will simply do a code snippet. I will write a name Flexbox layout. So what I will do is I will simply save it, open with the live browser. Currently the page is empty. Now I will first create a snippet with the help of which I will explain you the concepts of Flexbox layout. So there is few things that are important related to Flexbox layout. there are few properties in the CSS that are applied to the parent, and there are few properties related to the flexbox that are applied to the child element. So let me create a snippet code for you guys, and then I will explain you. So I have created a flex container, and inside that flex container, I will create a few items, right? I will create a multiple items here. Let me quickly copy paste these. So we have four items. So now, since we have not applied any CSS properties, the normal way how these elements will be rendered on the screen is that they will be stacked on top of each other, right? So like, right, if I go here on the page, if I refresh it, you guys will see that these elements are rendered. Now, since these are inside the divs, so it will be taking the entire available space. So what I will do is I will simply give colors. For now, what I will do is I will simply select the item class, and this class is applied to every item. So I will simply give it a color so that we can see that every element is taking the entire available space and is stacking on top of each other. Reason being that they are the divs, and divs are the display. The divs have the CSS properties display set as block by default. So what we can do is now we will study about how we can make elements appear in front of each other or in a different way rather than stacking on top of each other with the help of flex container. So before doing that, let me set some width for every element. Let's say I have elements with a width of 200 pixel and also a height of 200 pixel. So I can make it look like a square on the screen. So now you can see that we have elements, div elements that are taking only 200 pixel in width, and they are also taking 200 pixel in terms of height. So they are still stacked on top of each other. Now, what I want is I don't want these elements to be stacked on top of each other. I want them to appear in front of each other like we were doing with the floats. But now without float, we will be utilizing the concept of Flexbox, which is most widely used one you will see, and it is very easy to apply. With float, there are when you go into the complex kind of layouts, it becomes really difficult to manage the components, right? With the help of Flexbox layout, it is very simple that how amazingly and how easily these elements will organize on the web page. So what I will do now next is I will try to show these elements in front of each other rather than on top of each other in a stacking format. So let's go here. So first you have to understand that there are four items inside one container. So for Flex, there are few properties that will be applied to the main container, and there are few properties that will be applied to its child container. Most of the Flex properties are applied to the main container. So let's see one by one. I will choose the main container, flex dash container, and I will change its display property. Right now, its display is set to in block, right? I will change it to flex. Now you will see when I have changed the display property to flex, it started appearing beside each other rather than on top of each other, right? Now it is in front of each other. Item 1, item 2, item 3, and item 4. Now they are showing in front of each other. So what happened actually? Earlier, the display property by default with the help of user agent style sheet, which browser applies to the div by default, it has display property of block, and each element were pushing the next element to the next line. So, but when we set the display property to flex, now what happened is each element is now showing in front of each other. Now, why this is showing in front of each other? Reason is this property, flex direction. When you give any element, any container, a property of a flex, its flex direction property is by default set to row. So, because the flex direction property is set to row, these elements are appearing in row, right? If I want, I can change this flex direction to column. Now this will again start showing in a vertical way. In means stacking on each other. Now the flex direction is set to column. So with the flex box, it is really important to know how your elements will flow on the web page. It is set with the help of flex direction property. Right now we have seen we can show the elements in a row or we can show the elements in a column. Now I will show you one more thing. What I will do is I will give this Flexbox container a border of 2 pixels solid blank so that you can see the boundary of this flex container. Now you can see the boundary of this flex container. All right. So you can see how these flex containers are looks like. Now I will again change this flex direction to row. So you can see the flex direction is now set to row. Now there is few things that now we will understand. Right now we have set flex direction to row. What is happening is this is starting from the left side. Now what we can do is we can also set it to row reverse. See what will happen. When we set it to row reverse, what happen is now the items are starting from the right side instead of the left side. Item 1, item 2, item 3 and item 4. Similarly, this we can do with the column. So we can give the flex direction a property of column reverse and then it started from bottom rather than from the top. So I will set it back to row now. So now I have set it back to row and it is again starting from the left side. Now what we will do is I will give a minimum height to this container so that we can see a few more properties. Let's see a minimum height of 500 pixel to this container. Maybe 600 pixel would be more better to see. Okay, now it has a 600 pixel property. Now I will move these elements inside this container. I will see how we can make a layout that in which we can center these divs or we can move these divs on the right side, on the left side, top, bottom, center. So understand that how we can actually organize this stuff so that we can move these elements inside this flex container. We have to understand 3 to 4 properties. Let's start. So there is a property known as justify content. With the help of justify content, what we can do is by default value is currently set to flex start. So flex start means from the start, from the left side. Since flex direction is row, the start would be on the left side. If the flex direction is row reverse, the start would be from the right side. So since right now it is row, so flex start means from the left side. Now, if I want that these elements should be on the right side, I can set this justify to flex end. Now you will see by setting the flex end, it has moved those elements and now it is on the right side. Item 1, 2, 3 and 4. These are on the right side. So here we have to understand one important concept for which I will take the help of this snipping tool. To explain this, I will take a screenshot. Wait a second, let me take a screenshot. Okay. So now I will explain you. So when you are studying about the Flexbox, you have to understand that there are two axes, right? One is main axis This is the main axis and one is cross axis. This is really important to know, main axis and cross axis, because the properties that we are studying right now changes based on the main and the cross axis. So the main axis right now is this horizontal x-axis. This is right now the main axis. So if you want to move your elements, these items, along the main axis, right? You have to use the property justify content. Right now, if we saw that we have set the justify content to flex end, due to which these elements are moved to the flex end side. Why? Because this the main axis, we are moving it along the main axis. The main axis is this one, x-axis, right? So if we have to move the elements along the main axis, we have to use a justify content property. Right now, let's say I want to center it, I will do it center. Once I did center, see what will happen. Now these elements are centered along the x-axis. By x-axis, I mean the main axis. Right now, this main axis is this horizontal axis. So I have moved the content along this. So if we have to move the elements inside a flex container along the main axis, we have to utilize a property justify content, and we can give a different value to these properties. Right now we have seen flex start, flex end, and center. Now, if we have to move the element along cross axis, what we have to do is we have to utilize a property known as just the align center, align items. So now what I will do is I will move the element vertically in the center. So I have to utilize the property align center. Now you can see that these elements are now moved in a vertical way. So to move the element along the main axis, what we have to do is we have to utilize the property justify content. To move the element along cross axis, we have to utilize the property known as justify align items, right? So, but these axes can change based on the flex direction. What I mean by that is, let's say right now the flex direction is rho. So the main axis will be along the x-axis and the cross axis will be along the y-axis. Now let's say, let me comment down these two property, and now let's change it to column. Now we have changed the flex direction to column. Now you have to keep in mind that the main axis is also changed. When you have changed the flex direction to column, the main axis is now this one, the vertical one from top to bottom. This is the main axis, right? And the cross axis now is along the x-axis. So when you change the direction from from row to column, the axis also gets changed. So the main axis is now along this vertically, right, along y-axis, whereas the cross axis is now along the main axis. So now if we have to move this element into the center of this div, so what we have to do is, right, what we have to do, see which property will actually affect. Now justify center will do nothing because this is moving the elements along the main axis. Now the main axis is along vertical. So it is moving it along the vertical, right? That's why you are not seeing any effect. So it means that now if I have to move it along the x-axis, I have to utilize this property align center. So if I can just comment this out and align it center, so now you can see it is moved along x-axis, this whole stuff, right? So this is very important concept to know that when we change the flex direction, the axis gets changed and the properties also gets changed. The effect of the properties gets changed because it works with the axis, right? So justify content work with the main axis and align items works with the cross axis. So if the axis is changed due to the direction, so you have to keep in mind that the effect that is going to be happen on the web page will be different, right? So I hope that these two stuff is clear to you guys now. So for now, what I will do is I will make it back to row. I will do justify center, justify. All right, now it is in the center. Now I will tell you a few more properties now. All the properties which we are applying currently is on the flex container, right? So now what we will do again is we will study few more values for this justify content. With this justify content, we can give some values like space around, right? So now since it is set to row, the main axis is along x-axis, so the justify content will organize the elements along main axis. So you can see I have given the space around. Now what it does is it has given these spaces around these items, right? So here is a space, here is a space, here is a space. The space between these elements are even, but you can see that in the start and in the end, the spaces are not equal to these, right? Because here it has the left space, and then this has the right space, this item has the left space. Then these two spaces gets added, but here we only have the right space, and here we only have the left space. So these are not actually evenly distributed spaces. So what I will show you next is the space around is applying the space around these elements. There is a space between. It will only apply the space between these items, and it will pushes these first and the last items to touch the corners, right? See, now you can see the first item and the last items are now touching the corners, and the space is now only applied between these elements. All right. So there is another property which is space evenly. What it does, it will divide the space, available space evenly, whether it is from start to end. Now you will see this start space and this space is evenly distributed. This end space. Now these items are exactly in the center along main axis. So this is the properties, and these are the values that I have applied. So similarly, along y-axis, you can give these values as well, space evenly and space between and space around. So you can give these properties for a line item, these values. So now let's see few things. Let's see the responsiveness. When I go and I am on the screen where the width is, I am on the mobile screen or on the tablet. So you can see when I actually decrease the width, so these items are now shrink. You can see these items are getting shrink. Right? So it is not responsive right now. You can see these are getting shrink on the small device. It will be like this. So this is not responsive, right? So what I want is I actually want that when there is not enough space for these items to accommodate in a one line, the item should go on the next line. So let's see what we can do with this. There is a property known as flex wrap. I will wrap, I will give it a value of wrap. By default, it has a value of no wrap. So what it does is, see now, instead of shrinking, now it is pushing the element to the next line when there is no space. See, now when there is no space, the elements or the items goes to the next line rather than on the shrinking on the same line. So this is making elements or the or our web page layout looks more cooler and amazing when we see it on multiple devices with a different kind of width. So let's get back here. If we do a no wrap, let's say if we do we can also give no wrap, which is a by default property. So with no wrap, you can see it is shrinking. It has a shrink effect, right? So with flex wrap and no wrap, I hope this concept is clear now. So this is the wrap. Okay. Now we will move to another property which is really important. You see, when you have done this wrap, there is a different kind of spacing between these elements. The spacing here is different and the spacing here is different, right? So what we want to, this is because of the reason, this is again very important to know. When we have items in the multiple line, this is the concept of a flex box. We have already stated that there is a main axis and there is a cross axis. When we have multiple lines, so we have main and cross axis for each line. For example, this is the main axis, then there is a cross axis for this line. Similarly, there is a cross axis for this row and there is a main axis for this row. So why there is a lot of space here? Because these elements are organizing based on their own axis of each row. But what we want to do is we want these four elements to appear exactly in the middle of this black box with even space between them, right? So we don't want that the spaces between the rows and between the columns appears to be different. So remember one thing, if you want to do like this, keep in mind there is a one big axis, there is a third big axis also, right? Which is independent of these rows. What we want to do is we want to move all these elements now so that they appear here in the center of this main axis. So to move the content when we have multiple rows along the main axis, we have to utilize a property known as align content if we want to move it along the y-axis of the big main axis, right? So if I make it center, now you will see the effect. Right now it is like this. When I will save it, you will see. See, now it is in the exact same place, right? So there is another property that I will show which will help you guys. There is a gap property with the help of which I can okay, before going to the gap property, here is an evenly space that is applied. That's why you are seeing the space in between here. I do it in the center so that you can see exactly these boxes are in the center. Now what we can do is I can apply two properties. Row gap. If I want to give the gap between the rows, I say 10 pixel, right? Now you can see the gap between each row is 10 pixel. I can give a property column gap 10 pixel. Now you can see these elements are exactly in the middle of this black box. So I hope this concept is clear. With this we can do the row gap and column gap with a single shorthand property gap as well, which will apply on both row and column. So if I give simply a 10 pixel of a gap, so it will do same like these two lines were doing. So this is the concept of align content. This aligned content will align the elements along the big main axis when we have multiple rows. So the concept that you have to remember, when we have multiple rows, each row have its own main and cross axis, and then there is a big main axis that is related to the parent, right? And if we want that our all the elements are moving along the relative to the parent, then what we have to do is we have to utilize the align content property. So now next I will discuss one more property. For now, whatever we are spreading is on the parent container. Now we will see what we can do with the child. Let's say this item, all the childs have a class item. So if I want to give a property to all the items, I can give, for now I will remove the flex wrap so that I can help you and I can explain my concept. So I want to apply one property which is flex shrink. Now flex shrink by default is 1, right? It is shrinking. By default is set to 1, right? If you go, you will see that the items are shrinking. Each item is shrinking. So now if we want it to 0, see what will happen. Now it is not shrinking, but it is overflowing. You can see when there is no weight, these are now overflowing, means going outside these black lines, this parent container. It is going outside this parent container. It is not shrinking now. So I will set it back to 1 so that it shrinks, right? So now when I will do like this, these items will shrink. I will refresh it. Go back. I will say that these items will now shrink. Okay. So now what we will do is that this shrink property can be applied to a single item as well. Let's say I want that my item 1 shrink faster than the rest of the items. When we decrease the width, the item 1 should shrink faster than the other items. Or we can also decide we don't want item 1 to shrink, but we want all other items to shrink. Let's do like this, that we don't want our item 1 to shrink. What we have to do is, since we have the item 1 property, item 1 ID, I will select it by ID. Now what I will do is I will use a flex dash shrink to 0. I will set it to 0, that I don't want item 1 to shrink when we decrease the width. I only want rest of the items will shrink, right? So what we will do is, you will see, if I decrease the width, the item 1 will not shrink. It will keep its width, right? Whereas all other items will now shrink. You can see. So this item 1 is not a 1, 0 or a Boolean property. This is a relative property. Means you can decide how fast a particular item should shrink in comparison to an other one, right? If, for example, I can shrink it, I can set it to 2. So now you will see that the item 1 will shrink faster than the all other items. If I, for example, now I will, if I decrease the weight, you will see item 1 will shrink faster than the, it is, all items are shrinking, but item 1 is shrinking faster. So this is a relative, you can say a property. You are telling that all other items will shrink slow and item 1 will shrink faster, 2 times faster than the all other items. So similarly, like we have a shrink property, similarly we have a grow property as well. So we want, when we have an enough space available, for example, so now what I will do is I will remove this. Now you can see we have enough space available, right? We want, when we have the space available in terms of width, we want that our item should grow and takes the available entire space, right? So what we have to do is we will write the property flex grow to 1. So when we write the property flex grow to 1, what will happen is all the entire available width will be occupied by these items. If there is a space, then they will take the entire available space. Now if you shrink, you can see it is shrinking, and when you increase, their width is getting increased because we have the space available. So I think this concept shrink and flow is clear to you. Similarly, you can apply, this is also a relative property like a shrink, that you can decide if you want some elements to grow faster than the others, you can use the grow property. So now what we can do is we can do one more thing. All the items which are appearing here have one property known as order. It means how they will render in terms of on the screen. So right now everyone has the value of order set to 0. So it means how we have written in the HTML, they are appearing in the same sequence. We wrote HTML5, we wrote item 1 before item 2, so it is appearing before item 2. Similarly, they are appearing in the same sequence in which we have written them in the code, right? So what now we can do is, let's say without changing an HTML structure, if we want that item 3 should appear here in place of item 1 and item and rest of the item pushes, right? So we want item 3 to appear first. So what we have to do is we have to change the value of order. So we have to make the item 3 order lower than the item 1 order so that it comes on the first place. So since I told you that all the order values are 0. So if I want to move item 3 to the first place, I have to change its value to -1 or any negative value. So let's go select item 3, change its order to -1. So now you can see item 3 is now appearing on the left side. On the left side. So without changing any HTML structure, we have moved the item 3. So this is really important. Sometimes using media queries, we want certain elements on the mobile to appear on top, but when they go on the desktop, we want them to be appear on the last section, right? So this is important that we can change the order with the help of order properties. So if we want certain element to appear before a specific element, we have to lower its order value. So I hope this concept is clear now. With the help of Flexbox, now you will be able to create an amazing layout pages. So the main concept that you have to remember is that in Flexbox, we have two axes, main axis and cross axis, and the different properties changes when we change the flex direction. Because when we change the flex direction, the main axis changed. With the main axis, the effect of the properties also gets changed. So you have to know that where your main axis is at the moment when you are trying to apply justify content, align items, and align content property. So this is all for today's lecture. I hope that this is clear to you guys. If there is any question, you can comment on the below this video, and I will try to answer there. Thank you very much.